Rehabilitation Project. Welcome. Just a few housekeeping items. First of all, the facilities, the restrooms are just outside the door, both men's and women's right there. In terms of the agenda, we'll have Fred Pashesh. Fred, is that right?
That's close enough.
And Ed, Fred will do a brief welcome and an overview of the project. And Ed Noriega, who's the project manager for the project, he'll talk about certain design aspects of the project and where we are right now. After Ed's presentation, we'll have two opportunities for Q&A. The first opportunity will be an open discussion, or will be open to everyone here. And those questions will pertain mostly to the project as a whole. After that, we'll have breakout sessions in which folks can see closely the project on these the printouts, and you get asked questions specific to either your specific needs or your specific properties. Again, we are asking that the Q&A is focused largely or just mostly on this Geer Road Pavement Rehabilitation Project. If you have questions regarding other projects or other aspects of the city, just let me know. I'll get your information down and I'll try to triage that to the right person. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Fred.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you all for coming. Just a brief background on the project. On August 22nd of last year, we took a proposal to the City Council for rehabilitation of Geer Road. And the council approved an amendment to Mark Thomas's agreement. They are our design consultant, to start developing design plans up to 30% stage of development for the entire corridor from Golden State Boulevard all the way to Taylor Road. Portions of the corridor, as you know, are located within assessment district boundaries, but we are studying the entire corridor and we are making recommendations for pavement rehabilitation for the entire corridor to the council for their consideration. As part of the process and scope of services, we are holding this public information meeting. The consultant is going to present their plans as they have developed up to this point, answer some of your questions. We will collect your comments and take them into consideration, and hopefully next month we can make a full presentation to the City Council. Again, at that point, there's another opportunity for the public to make comments. After that, pending Council's approval of the scope of services for final design, the design consultant will start working on final plans and developing the bid documents. And the process is, once the bid documents are available, then we advertise for construction, and Ed will go through the potential schedule for start of construction based on the type of funding that we may actually be able to secure for the project. With that, I turn this over to Ed Noriega.
Thanks, Fred. Would you guys prefer to be looking at that monitor or the one behind me? Which? This one? I'll just stand over here. Sounds good. So one of the items that we want to make sure everyone kind of understands is that please put your comments down. Write your comments down on a card because that's really going to be helpful. We've assessed the corridor. We've kind of have some recommendations, but I think it's really important. You guys are the users, and it's really important for us to hear what the challenges are, what your concerns are, so that we can look at the project fully and hopefully include a lot of these recommendations. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the project. Oops, what happened? All right, here we go. So Geer Road is mainly, it's a really important artery in the middle of the city. It goes north-south from Golden State all the way to Taylor Road. It's a very busy corridor in the city. It's really important. There's a lot of commercial activity in the city. There are schools along the corridor and some residential structures along Geer Road as well. So our objective on this project, it's really to fix the pavement, fill in some sidewalk gaps that are missing along the corridor, make it ADA compliant at some of these corners, some old ramps that need to be compliant, and to look at your approved plans within the city. You have an active transportation plan, as well as your general plan, to make sure that we stay consistent with what you, the city, had envisioned this corridor to be. So what we're going to go over tonight to get to that point is to really to look at, just provide an overview of the project, the process, and how we get to construction. We'll look at the existing conditions, as well as talk about your plan within the city. Then we'll talk about the proposed improvements that we've, after digesting that information, what the cross-section would look like, the pavement rehab strategies for the corridor, some extension, some improvements along the corridor, as well as making curb ramps ADA compliant. Then we'll talk about funding. How are you going to pay for this project, right? As well as the schedule. Excuse me. So right now, this is the process that we're in. We're in the preliminary engineering stages of the project. We're in this green box off to the left. We got started in the fall of last year, now in the spring. The next step is to go through the environmental process and final design, which will start here in the summer, and will take about a year to do that. So at the end of next summer, we'll be ready to bid this project. So we anticipate construction to begin in the fall of 2025. But right now, after preliminary engineering, we've kind of looked at the corridor and presenting it to you, trying to get the public's input into the project, right? So it's really important for us to hear from you. So please, if you have any questions, comments, or especially comments about the corridor, please write it down. That way we can document it, we can make it part of the project. All right, the existing condition of the corridor. A lot of bad pavement out in the corridor. I think I heard that time and time again tonight, actually. There's some gutter and sidewalk that have uplifted, that kind of are lifted up because of the roots of trees that haven't been maintained over the years. Some curb ramps that aren't ADA compliant that need to be upgraded, as well as some missing sidewalks along the corridor. Generally, that's what we've noticed out in the corridor. So what have we done so far? We've looked at the corridor, surveyed it, performed some geotechnical investigations out there, as well as researched some utilities that are out there that may be impacted with the project. And we've developed the plans that you see here tonight on these strip maps of what the cross sections would look like, as well as what the pavement strategy or the rehab strategy that we'll be recommending, and we'll talk about that here shortly. So here's just the map of the corridor. It's been rotated where it's going. Golden State Boulevard's on the left side, Taylor Road is on the right side. The yellow line in the middle of is Geer Road. Missing sidewalks, the red line shown there, mainly on the south side of the corridor. Those need to get filled. Bike lanes. So there are bike lanes striped on the northern part of the corridor, north of Monte Vista. And this is just the typical section of the existing corridor, where you have a 4-lane corridor with a raised median for most of the corridor. The width of the roadway is roughly 80 feet from curb to curb, and the right-of-way width from back-a-walk to back-a-walk is roughly 110 feet. So just keep those numbers in mind. The city's general plan, with the ATP plan also included in there, is a wider corridor for this facility. Basically, from the roadway, it's a 4-lane roadway with a raised median, but it would be 96 feet wide from curb to curb, much wider, 16 feet wider than the existing condition out there, right? Then the width of the right-of-way would be 126 feet wide. So it's quite a bit wider than what you have out there. So to apply this plan would require a lot of demolition, a lot of reconstruction. It really would, a lot of right-of-way acquisitions, right? So it changes the whole nature of the corridor. So our job is to try to implement this as best we can into the existing corridor, right? So one of the elements of the project here is that, so with the 2 lanes in each direction, a 4-lane corridor. It's also applying a bike lane. In the general plan, you have a buffered bike lane planned. What that means is that it's a striped bike lane with markings that gives about a 2-foot gap between the motor vehicle and that bike lane. What it does is it just makes it a little bit safer. It's a traffic calming device where, as a motorist, you see markings, you have a tendency of slowing down. Then, as a cyclist, you have that buffer where you feel safer as a cyclist going down a 4-lane corridor like this, right? But there are some instances that if we apply bike lanes all over the place, there's going to be some impacts to parking. And so we're going to look at or recommend to the city actually in potentially applying these shared lanes where on the outside lane, putting some markings down for cyclists to share in those areas that are difficult to, you'll basically be eliminating parking if you were to stripe the bike lane. So on-street parking that would be impacted with the project are shown here in green, where for the most part here for the red areas that you see here are the residential areas. So along the corridor, what we notice is that there's a lot of surface parking on commercial parcels, as well as in some apartment complexes, right? For residential areas, there are some, they've got on-site parking. So they're not so much impacted by losing on-street parking, but there are residences, structures, especially to the south side of the corridor, that don't have on-site parking, and I think are relying on on-street parking. So that would be impacted by this project. Just trying to be transparent as possible about what the inconveniences are. And so I think if you're in one of those parcels, please let us know, because I think there might be a way to provide that shared lane in that area without eliminating parking. So that's one item that we really need to know. From a pavement rehab strategy, what we've noticed after our geotechnical investigations is that south of Canal to Golden State and north of Calaveras, the pavement's in good condition. So a resurfacing would be sufficient at those locations. So it's mainly grinding off 2 to 3 inches of asphalt and putting it back the same. However, the area between Canal and Calaveras in the middle there, that middle section that you see, pavement's in really bad condition. That needs to be reconstructed. So that would be the recommendation. I'll just leave it at that. There are signals along the corridor, so when we do fix the pavement, we just have to make sure that we do repair the loops to make sure they're in good condition after the project. At those intersections also, there's a couple of intersections that we're looking at extending the left turn lane, which is the southbound direction of Golden State southbound Geer, making that left turn movement onto Golden State. It's a very awkward left turn movement. It's very short, that needs to be extended. Then the other location is on the northbound direction, making a left onto Monte Vista. That also needs to be extended. So we're in discussions with the city on how long to make those, what's the feasible length to make those, to extend those left turn pockets. So we estimate this project to cost about $13 million, right? A big dollar. And right now, all of that, if it were to be constructed today, would be all Measure C dollars, so your tax dollars. What the city has done is that they've applied for 4 applications for surface transportation block grants. So it's federal dollars, up to $4.8 million. That we'll find out here in the fall if the city is able to secure $4.8 million towards the project, or maybe it's $1.2 million. So 4 applications of $1.2 million each. So that would then take the place of that Measure A funds for the project. So instead of $13 million just all for Measure A, maybe $4.8 million can come from the feds. So that's a strategy the city is trying to do. And another funding source that the city will be applying for is the local partnership program. So it's the SB1 funds that from the state, where this summer there's going to be a call for projects, and so this will be one of the projects that we'll make sure that the city applies funding for. So that way you can leverage, the city will be able to leverage its Measure C dollars towards other fund, or it'll basically leverage these funding sources, right, if we're able to get them. And so you can extend those Measure A dollars towards other projects in the future.
Assessment district funds in those areas covered by assessment districts, primarily in Northwood, Vista. Is that funding going to be full to be a part of the project?
So right now, I don't know what City Council will direct us to do. Perhaps Fred, if you'd like to answer that question.
That's one reason we are studying the whole corridor, so we can present the pavement treatment option. Yes, but we have to be very careful. As you know, Measure A cannot be used on assessment districts. So what the mechanism is, how we are going to basically take care of the whole corridor and which pot the money is coming from, that is something that we are going to ask the council to give us guidance on.
That's going to be a part of this 13-1 coverage.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is correct. It's, yes. So LPP is 50-50 share. So let's say we get that, half of the project comes from LPP. STBG, whatever we get there, can cover the 50%, part of the 50%, which is the city's share.
And that's how you funded Monta Vista and Hawkeye before. So
Very similar, yes. Yeah, so let's say if the city is able to receive $4.8 million of STBG funds, then there's another $4.8 million potentially that the city could get rewarded for LPP funds. So could be nice. Anyway, so my last slide's talking about the schedule. So right now, the top bullet there, we're at the preliminary engineering stage, and this evening, talking about the project with you. Comments are really important. Please put those down, get this over to us, so that would be great. And we do, as Fred mentioned, depending on what we hear, some adjustments that may need to be made, we'll be going to the City Council, hopefully in a month, to seek approval to move forward to final design. As final design progresses between this summer and next summer, the next steps really, it's trying to get to construction in the fall. But before we do that, we do intend to come back to the public. Whether it's going to be this fall or in the spring of 2025, but mainly the important thing is to let the community know again of what the actual final design looks like and what the inconveniences of construction will be. Because there's going to be some lane shifting, there's going to be a lot of inconvenience out there. Some driveways will need to be reconstructed. You know, people will be concerned about the closures of driveways and whatnot. So what we plan to do is coming back to the public and have a plan on how that will be implemented during construction.
You want to start in the fall versus starting after the rains?
Well, that is a target, right? So during the rains, you can do a lot of work, such as long as you're able to get concrete down. Concrete cures really nice when it's cold and when it's wet. So ideally, contractors actually want to get a lot of the earthwork done and be able to pave in the winter time because the curing is nice. So the fall is a good time to start. It's just that you have to be aware of when the weather does hit. That way you can plan the projects correctly.
High Street on Quincy set for about 4 months with nothing going on.
That's the challenge of weather here in the valley. Yes. So anyway, again, comment cards, really important. And if you come, think of another comment after this meeting, please email them to dan@portcitymarketing.com. And that email is on the comment card as well. So there's a number of ways in getting us your feedback, and we'd like to hear from you. So with that, questions?
Yeah, how long do you think it's gonna take, Bill?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet. So right now we're in preliminary design. We're going to look at quantities. We'll look at how long this will take. It also depends on the type of paving that needs to happen out there. So depending on the type of pavement that's selected and the methods, I don't think it'll be done in one season, but we'll know more about that later on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how specific do you want to get with the traffic lights? There is a problem that I notice every time I go down Geer Road. Is this the time to mention it, or?
I would like you to write that down, actually. Well, no, which one it is, because please do write it down also.
Road.
Pedris.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the one I'm having trouble with too.
This young lady
Yeah.
gives you two.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's just a little bit too high on the wrong side. Needs to be over here. The right-handed
Yeah.
or lower.
We'll look into that. Mr. Treeweiler. Sir, please do us a favor and write it down as detailed as you can. We would appreciate that. And now you have the city engineer's ears next to you too, so.
Okay. Okay. On the dollar picks me up at North and Gear for day program. Would this project hinder the bus getting to me?
So the construction of it, there might be some inconveniences. We may need to coordinate with the bus service to see what the needs are.
Oh, it's the dial ride.
Yeah. So
Where my house is, they can't get up to it during school hours.
yeah, I think there would be some. That's a really good point, because anytime you reconstruct an area, there will be some inconveniences. You may experience some inconveniences, but we'll do what we can in the specifications to try to make sure that it's minimized.
Will the utility poles be going underground? Is there any thought to do that so they won't be in the middle of the sidewalk?
So that's not part of this project. So there's a program, but it's a PG&E program, but it's not part of the funding for this project. Oh, this TID. You're right. So I don't know if TID collects. So PG&E is interesting because PG&E actually collects from each customer to potentially underground utilities. So, but I don't know if TID has that program. Actually, I'm not aware if TID has a program to underground their utilities.
We run across it and develop parcels.
Correct.
Where the lines are overhead, and they are requiring now to try to get them underground
Correct. That's with private development.
at the expense of the developer.
Correct.
Not by the public property.
Correct.
So you're going to put the sidewalks right, they're just going to stay right there with the same poles in the middle of them?
So if you put sidewalks where there are poles, there is a requirement to make sure that there's enough sidewalk width to get around those poles through ADI has requirements on how to do that.
There is not at North and Gear.
Yeah, I think maybe that condition is the existing condition prior to these laws being in place. So now there are laws in place that when we do put on sidewalks around obstructions like that, the requirement is to make sure that there's an ADA path around it.
We will definitely look at that. One thing that I wanted to mention here is on a couple of projects, we have coordinated with TID, and they have cooperated very well, and very quickly they have moved their poles. So that's been very fantastic working with them. So wherever we can, wherever it is possible, we are going to ask them to look at relocating the poles so we have higher clearance.
Along those same lines, like Kroll School and other, we have trees in the sidewalk growing into power lines. Can we eliminate those trees and take them out? Because it's tearing up not only sidewalks, curbs, and gutters, but they get into the power lines, and we're spending way too much money to have to trim trees, and it's crazy to put trees 2 feet away from a curb. Seriously.
Yeah,
Ed, we want to make sure we capture everyone's comments. So I know this is a great dialogue, but if you do have a comment that we need to record, just raise your hand and I'll get you the microphone, because we may have some trouble with some of the dialogue if you don't have the microphone capturing that. So it's important for us to capture all of that. So thank you.
Can you clarify what questions you want? Can you clarify what questions you want at this time, and where and what you want us to put on comments?
oh, gotcha. So the from a question standpoint, just general questions around the corridor funding, feel free. Comment cards for me, what's really important are those items that perhaps you don't see on what we're making recommendations on that you would like us to address. I think is important.
What about the penny per gas on gallons? Those money where goes? Supposed to be for city of Turlock.
The
For the road, yes.
yeah, so the Measure A, is that what you're talking about, Measure A? Oh, the gasoline tax. So that's the one of the funding sources that we're applying for is the SB1, the LPP. No, so the $13 million is our estimate for what the project will cost. The half-cent sales tax that you're talking about, we want a piece of that to fund this project.
And we basically want to minimize the amount of Measure A money that comes into this project by going after funding, state and federal funding.
How much of the 13.1 is allocated for unforeseen?
So when we develop estimates at this level, we have a high contingency amount. So there's the unforeseen is covered within that. But I was talking to someone earlier this evening that we're estimating what this project will cost when it bids a year and a half from now. The bidding climate might be different. So that's what we're trying to prepare for that. Yes, sir.
So I know you guys were mentioning that you guys are trying to get additional funding so that way you guys aren't having to use so much from the Measure A. But if the funding isn't secured, is this project going to happen one way or the other, meaning that you guys would have to take for Measure A?
There have been several presentations to the council by our finance director on different ways to finance these projects, roads program projects. One is Measure A. The other one is a portion of Measure L. Grants, like we spoke about tonight, and also financing. So the projects It's always the will of the council at the end how they decide, but the goal is to build all of these projects.
So just to kind of follow up, so this project will happen.
Yes.
Okay.
As we know it now, because the council has directed us to work on the plans.
What do we do in the next 2 to 3 years? I drive down Geer Road 5 or 6 times a day, and it's a challenge because of the potholes and driving around and what have you. So what is the short-term plan before it gets rehabilitated?
At this point, the short-term plan is to minimize the amount of money that we are going to sink into a road that is going to be totally redone. So what we have to do is fill the potholes as best as our maintenance crews can. Otherwise, if you go ahead and do any sort of, let's say, resurfacing portions of it, it's wasted money. Right, right.
The assessment districts up around Rose Circle and back that way, can
Yes.
that part of it be done ahead of time? Because those funds should be there for the roads in the assessment account.
That we have to look at and see how the council wants to proceed with that. On our own, we don't. We make those proposals to the
No, but
council for the
that's already
consideration.
included in the assessment that the taxpayers up
Right.
there,
Right.
property owners have been paying into. So those funds should be available for road resurfacing and what have you.
Yes. Here's what we are going to. That's the reason we are also looking at the entire corridor. And as part of that, we are going to obviously identify, the council knows, but we are going to emphasize these sections are in assessment district. Our finance director will look at the amount of funding available and make the recommendation to the city council on how to proceed.
That could go early, right?
You still have to design it.
You had a question?
Yes.
So along the same lines, sidewalks, particularly the ones that still have signs up because they have big gaps, are they going to sit there for 3 years? The big breaks in the sidewalks?
That is part of the maintenance department, and I honestly, at this point, I can't answer that. Generally, they put up signs, and sometimes they actually come out and have someone grind it down, but I don't know what their program is for that.
It isn't waiting on this
No,
necessarily.
no. That's totally separate.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what I-
that is separate.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I knew the answer, but that's a different department, right?
Okay.
All right, we have a question right here.
I think to follow up on where Jim's trying to kind of go, just to clarify, it sounds like if there's some funding sources already available, obviously planning there's kind of the big picture, but at some point earlier than later, it could spin into phase 1, phase 2.
It could, yes.
Then to be able to invest some of that
Right.
existing money into the north part
Sure.
sooner
Right.
than tying it to the whole project
Right.
that then would delay and then costs more
Right.
because
The-
the repairs aren't done sooner. So I think that's kind of where Jim was going.
Yes, the entire project isn't going to be done in one phase, obviously. So it's going to be segmented into several sections. And as part of the whole study, that is something that the council can decide. That basically it's north of Christofferson, north of Cy Lane. I believe all of that falls into
It probably goes all the way down to the university,
some of it, not all of it.
one side.
Yeah, one side. That is correct. That is correct. But when you only do one side, again, it has to be incorporated as part of the entire design to match.
Plan, but like Scott
Right.
was saying, you start,
Yes,
you know you have
yes,
that, so you can get it done. And
Yes.
instead of doing it last,
correct.
don't go south to north, go north,
Or,
or both ends.
exactly. Yes, yes.
All right. So with that, if there's any other, sounds like there's no more questions, we invite you all to check out the displays and have the team at Mark Thomas talk to you about specific portions of the project. If you have questions, again, we do ask if you have any questions, comments, or anything. My email is just dan@portcitymarketing.com. And then also the comment cards are a great opportunity for that as well. So.
Thank you all for coming out.